General Hospital will reveal Brenda did not return to Port Charles for nostalgia or another chance with Sonny. She came back because of a secret she could no longer keep. For years, she had struggled between exposing the truth and protecting an old friend from the storm that could upend their lives. But now, with everything about to unravel, she had no choice but to face reality. The revelation about Gio Palmieri had already sent shockwaves through town, but what no one suspected was that Lois had not told the whole truth. When Brenda confessed that Gio was not the only child Lois had given birth to, that he had a twin sister who had been secretly given away at birth, everyone was left in stunned silence. This revelation did not just shake Lois to her core, it also left Ned reeling. He had believed Lois had told him everything, that there were no more secrets between them, but now, the past was proving to be far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Brenda knew that exposing this truth meant putting Lois in a difficult and possibly dangerous position, but she could not stand by and allow a child to be forgotten in the shadows because of the choices made by the adults around her. As more pieces of the puzzle began to surface, new questions emerged. Who had taken the child? Where had she been raised? And, most importantly, what had forced Lois to make such a heartbreaking decision? The answers threatened to pull everyone into a web of uncertainty, where the ones they trusted most might be the ones hiding the darkest secrets. Brenda's return to Port Charles was not just about exposing the truth, she came back to demand answers. This time, she refused to let Lois hide behind vague explanations or evasive justifications. There was something more to this story, something deeper than a mere choice made out of desperation. Brenda had spent years carrying the weight of this secret, knowing that one day it would have to come to light. But what haunted her the most was not just the act of Lois giving away her own child, it was the question of why. What had truly driven Lois to make such an agonizing decision? Was it fear? Was she terrified that keeping both children would put them in danger? Had she done it to protect Gio, shielding him from something, or someone, far more sinister? Or had there been another force at play, a dark and powerful influence that left Lois with no other choice? The more Brenda dug into the past, the more she realized that Lois's decision had not been made in isolation. There were gaps in the story, moments of silence that didn't add up. And when she confronted Lois, demanding to know the truth, she saw something flicker in her old friend's eyes, a fear that had not faded with time. But Lois wasn't the only one reliving the ghosts of the past. As Brenda followed the breadcrumbs leading to the lost child, memories she had long buried resurfaced like a recurring nightmare. She remembered hushed conversations, the unease in Lois's voice, the times she had sensed something was off but had never pressed for answers. Now, those pieces of the past were falling into place, painting a far darker picture than she had ever imagined. Lois had fought hard to keep this secret buried, to convince herself that what was done was for the best. But now, with Brenda refusing to back down and the truth clawing its way to the surface, she could no longer run from what she had tried to forget. The missing child was no longer just a whisper of the past, she was out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. And whatever Lois had been protecting her from was still lurking in the shadows, ready to strike if the truth was finally revealed. Brenda's return to Port Charles did more than disrupt Lois's carefully guarded world, it sent shockwaves through the lives of everyone connected to her, including Sonny. Once again, he found himself caught in the whirlwind that always seemed to follow Brenda wherever she went. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how many attempts he had made to move on, there was something about her that could always throw him off balance. But this time, she wasn't just a heartbroken ex-lover seeking closure, she was a woman carrying a truth that could change everything. Brenda had always had a way of stirring chaos, but this time, the storm she brought wasn't just emotional, it was a revelation that threatened to unravel the fabric of Port Charles itself. She held the key to a secret so deeply buried that even those closest to it had spent years pretending it didn't exist. And while Sonny had faced countless enemies, betrayals, and dangers in his life, there was something about the way Brenda looked at him now, determined, relentless, unwavering, that made him realize this wasn't just about her personal vendetta. It was bigger than that. For Lois, Brenda's determination to expose the truth was nothing short of catastrophic. She had spent years building a life, protecting Gio, shielding him from the consequences of choices she had made long ago. And now, Brenda was threatening to tear it all down. Every desperate attempt Lois made to reason with her, to make her see the potential damage she could cause, was met with defiance. Brenda was not the woman who once walked away, who once let love and heartbreak dictate her decisions. She had returned stronger, driven by a purpose she refused to abandon. The tension between the two women reached its breaking point in a series of heated confrontations. Lois, desperate to maintain control, tried everything, pleading, bargaining, even threats, but Brenda was resolute. Every clash between them only pushed the situation closer to the edge, each argument more volatile than the last. Old wounds resurfaced, buried resentments boiled over, and what had started as a secret between a few people now became a battle that could no longer be contained. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. Brenda wasn't just fighting for justice, she was fighting against a carefully constructed lie, against years of deception, against the fear that had held Lois captive for too long. And as the truth loomed closer to the surface, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Sonny could see it happening, Lois's desperation, Brenda's unyielding resolve, the way their conflict threatened to consume everything in its path. But there was something else, something unspoken between him and Brenda, an undeniable force that neither of them could ignore. The past still had a grip on them, pulling them into familiar, dangerous territory. And as much as Sonny wanted to focus on the chaos unfolding around him, he couldn't escape the reality that Brenda wasn't just a woman returning with secrets, she was still his Brenda, the one who could always make him question everything. And this time, she wasn't walking away. Sonny had faced many ghosts from his past, but none had ever shaken him quite like Brenda. Her return was more than just a blast from the past, it was a reckoning. He had loved her once, and if he was being honest with himself, part of him had never stopped. She had always been the one woman who could pull him into the depths of chaos and passion all at once. She was the one who had left scars that time never truly healed. And now, she was back, carrying a truth so explosive that it threatened to change everything he thought he knew. Sonny had learned not to trust easily. Life had hardened him, taught him that love could be both his greatest strength and his ultimate downfall. But Brenda, she was different. She had always carried secrets, mysteries that made her impossible to pin down, but beneath all of that, he had always known one thing, he truly loved her. And now, as he looked into her eyes, seeing that same fire, that same passion, he knew she hadn't just returned to stir up old wounds. She was here for a reason, one that even he couldn't ignore. The return of Vanessa Marcel as Brenda marked more than just another chapter in Port Charles's ongoing drama, it was a full-blown explosion, a turning point that would pull every major player into the spiral of fate. The revelation she carried wasn't just about Lois, it would set off a chain reaction that no one could stop. Every secret that had been buried, every choice that had been made in the dark, was now clawing its way into the light. For Gio, learning the truth about his past would be nothing short of earth-shattering. He had always believed that Lois had told him everything, that she had fought to protect him from the world's dangers. But now, to discover that she had hidden something as monumental as a twin sister, a piece of his own identity that had been kept from him, would send him spiraling. Would he be furious? Devastated? Would he feel betrayed by the woman who had raised him, who had sworn to always be honest with him? Or would he demand answers, not just from Lois but from everyone involved in this tangled web of deception? The fallout would be catastrophic. Friendships, loyalties, and even love itself would be put to the test. Sonny, torn between the woman he had never truly let go and the chaos her return had ignited, would have to make a choice. Was he willing to stand by Brenda as she tore open old wounds, even if it meant facing the consequences alongside her? Was this love worth reigniting, knowing that the storm it brought could destroy everything in its wake? As the truth unraveled, Port Charles would once again find itself at the mercy of fate. And in the center of it all, Sonny and Brenda, two souls who could never quite stay away from each other, would have to decide whether their love was strong enough to survive the fire. Brenda's revelation about the existence of Joe's twin sister was more than just a buried secret, it was a seismic shift that threatened to upend everything. She didn't return to Port Charles merely to confront Lois or rekindle old flames, she came armed with the truth and, more importantly, the key to finding the missing child. For years, this secret had been kept in the shadows, hidden under layers of deception, fear, and heartbreak. But now, Brenda was ready to drag it into the light, regardless of the consequences. The moment she uttered the words, the room seemed to stand still. Lois's desperate attempts to silence her, to convince her that this truth would do more harm than good, only fueled Brenda's determination. There was no turning back now. Someone out there, Joe's twin, had been living a life built on a lie. And if there was one thing Brenda had learned over the years, it was that secrets always had a way of coming out, no matter how deeply they were buried. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Brooke Lynn, who had spent her life fiercely protecting those she loved, found herself struggling to grasp the reality that her mother had kept something so monumental from her. If Lois had hidden this, what else had she been lying about? The very foundation of their relationship cracked beneath the weight of betrayal. Chase, always the voice of reason, suddenly found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to support Brooke Lynn while battling his own shock. How could he possibly prepare her for the truth when he barely understood it himself? But perhaps the most unexpected reaction came from Dante. As a detective, he had built his career on uncovering the truth, but this time, the truth had found him in the most personal and devastating way possible. His family, his past, everything he thought he knew was suddenly in question. If Lois had gone to such lengths to hide one child, what else had been hidden? How far did this deception stretch? And what did it mean for the family he had spent years trying to hold together? The search for Joe's twin became an obsession. Brenda, determined to right the wrongs of the past, presented the clues she had spent years uncovering. A name, a location, breadcrumbs that could lead to the truth. But with every step closer to finding the missing twin, the danger surrounding them intensified. Someone did not want this secret to come out. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear that Lois had not acted alone. There were forces at play, powerful enough to keep this secret buried for decades, and now that it was unraveling, those forces were ready to strike. As the truth continued to unfold, the people of Port Charles faced a reckoning. Would they survive the storm, or would the weight of these revelations tear them apart? Relationships were tested, loyalties fractured, and the unbreakable bonds of family threatened to shatter. And at the center of it all, Brenda stood firm, knowing that once this truth was fully revealed, life in Port Charles would never be the same again. The identity of the person who adopted Joe's twin sister was a secret that had been buried for years, hidden beneath layers of deception, fear, and choices made in desperation. As Brenda pieced together the fragments of truth, one name emerged: Olivia Falconeri. Unbeknownst to anyone, Olivia had been the one to take in the child, raising her away from the chaos of Port Charles. She had done so not out of deception, but out of a desperate attempt to protect her from the forces that had driven Lois to make such a heartbreaking decision. But why had Lois chosen to separate the twins in the first place? And why had she kept this secret for so long? The answer lay in a dark chapter of Lois's past, one that she had tried to erase. Years ago, before Gio and his sister were born, Lois had crossed paths with a powerful and ruthless figure. A man who had sworn that if she kept both children, their lives would be in danger. Whether it was a debt unpaid, a past mistake, or simply the cruel will of someone seeking control, Lois had been forced to make the ultimate sacrifice. She could only keep one child safe under her own roof, while the other had to disappear to survive. Lois had made the impossible choice, choosing to raise Gio while ensuring his sister would be cared for by someone she trusted. Olivia had agreed to take the child, swearing never to reveal the truth. But as Brenda continued her relentless pursuit of justice, she unknowingly set into motion the one thing Lois had feared most, the return of the enemy who had forced her into silence all those years ago. As this truth began to surface, Sonny found himself once again at the center of Brenda's whirlwind. She had always been the one to pull him into chaos, to make him question everything he thought he knew. But this time, it wasn't just about their past, it was about the future of people they both cared about. Could he survive another one of Brenda's devastating truths? Could he stand beside her as she unraveled a mystery that would change everything? This revelation threatened to rip apart families, friendships, and alliances. Brooke, Lynn and Chase, who had only just begun to settle into a life together, suddenly found themselves caught in the fallout. Dante, Olivia's son, had to come to terms with the fact that his mother had been keeping a life-altering secret, and the weight of her decisions would force him to question his own sense of justice. The mystery of who had threatened Lois, and why they had gone to such lengths to keep the twins apart, would become the most urgent question of all. And as the layers of lies were stripped away, Port Charles would never be the same. The upcoming episodes of General Hospital would bring high-stakes confrontations, shocking betrayals, and life-changing revelations. The final truth. The identity of the long-lost twin and the real reason behind Lois's decision would shake the town to its core. And when the dust finally settled, the lives of everyone involved would be changed forever.